Welcome to the Disney Wedding Podcast. This show is brought to you by Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, the only guidebook and bridal organizer tailored exclusively to Disney's fairy tale weddings at Walt Disney World. I'm Carrie Hayward, and each week I feature Disney wedding updates, money-saving tips, and interviews with wedding vendors and real Disney couples. I also cover honeymoons, anniversaries, and engagements at the Disney parks and resorts. Join me now as the Disney Wedding Podcast celebrates romance at Disney destinations. Today on the Disney Wedding Podcast, I am speaking with Disney bride Sara Mickens Rivers about her ceremony at Animal Kingdom's Tree of Life with a reception at California Grill and a dessert party at UK Lochside in EPCOT. I thought you guys would be interested to hear how she chose all these locations and how she planned everything and how it all turned out. So welcome, Sara.
Thanks, Carrie. How are you?
I am awesome. Thanks so much for being on the show today. I always like to start at the very beginning and find out how you and your fiance decided that you wanted to have your wedding at Disney.
So I've always been a big Disney person. Growing up and coming to Walt Disney World, riding the monorail and hearing the announcement that you can get married at the wedding pavilion, I was like, oh, this would be amazing. And then I actually met my husband here at Disney at Animal Kingdom. So it just kind of made sense for us.
That's wonderful. How did your friends and family react when they found out where the wedding was going to be?
I don't think anyone was shocked. I think everyone was like, that makes perfect sense. You are Disney through and through, from your house to everything. So no one was really shocked.
How many guests did you invite and how many were able to make the trip?
We invited about 75 and we had 46 people come.
Got it. Did you set up a room block for your guests?
We did. So I'm actually a travel advisor, and initially I contemplated taking this on and planning my wedding and also booking all of my guests. And then I realized that would probably be too much. So we did do a room block. We did Pop Century as our value resort. We did Caribbean Beach as our moderate. And then we did Animal Kingdom Lodge.
And how did you choose the day of the week and time of day for your event?
One big factor for us was we live here in Central Florida. We knew weather would be a factor as we got more into the summer months. So we figured April would be somewhat safe in terms of weather. And then April's actually just been a very tough month for me personally. My dad and mom are both deceased. And so my dad's birthday is in April and my mom passed away in April. And so I wanted a memorable, positive memory for April. And so that's why we decided to go with April 26th. And then the day of the week, we just wanted the cheapest option. So we were open to either Tuesday or Wednesday.
How did you decide whether to have your ceremony after park hours versus morning hours?
Yeah, so that was, I think it almost was a no-brainer for us. So we started thinking about it and we listened to a lot of your podcasts and people who had their wedding at the Tree of Life. And we thought if we have to wait all day long to get married, either someone's going to miss it, someone's going to be at the pool, someone might just fall asleep, and then the anticipation of waiting all day. And then we also thought about the fact that our reception options could be limited, and then we would actually be spreading out our day maybe over to 2 days, which could be kind of hard for people who traveled. So I think that was another piece in our whole planning process.
What time did they have you start?
So initially it was going to be at 6 a.m. And about a week before our wedding, our planner called me and said, Disney has changed the park hours and we need to adjust your wedding. So it then went to 5:30 in the morning. So of course I was scrambling. I had to tell all of my guests. I then had to communicate with my vendors. We had to figure out, are we adding additional time to our photography and our videography? We knew we kind of had a long day. And so we were trying to figure out all of that. Our guests were fine with that. They knew that was out of our control. So they were like, that's totally fine. Disney did propose that we do a first look, which was one of the things that we did not want to do. So we stuck to that. We definitely did not do a first look. We were able to say, no, we'll adjust accordingly and we'll figure out the pictures on the back end of the ceremony. So we moved it up to 5:30 and we rolled with it.
Now, how did you choose your ceremony and reception venues?
So since we met at Disney's Animal Kingdom and The Lion King is my absolute favorite movie, it just kind of worked out. And then I watched probably every single episode of the Disney Fairy Tale Weddings show on Disney Plus and probably watched the Tree of Life one, I mean, more times than I can count. So I just knew I had to have my wedding there.
How did you choose California Grill for the reception?
So I think when we initially thought we were going to do the Whitehall room at Grand Floridian, and when we went to it, we were like, okay, this is a nice space, but it's not uniquely Disney. So yes, the monorail goes by, but walking into the space, it could look like any other ballroom or any other event space. And so we really wanted to be intentional about picking spaces that were unique to Disney. And so when we thought about it, we were like, well, we love California Grill. We love the food. The view is amazing. So our guests would start out at Animal Kingdom, then go here, get views of the Magic Kingdom. And it just kind of worked for us. We just really loved the view. And we knew that we wouldn't have to spend a lot on decor there.
That's a great point. Yeah, that view is all the decor you need.
Exactly.
Did you use any outside vendors for the portions of your event that you were able to?
I did. So for personal floral, I used Leaf and Blossom. They were amazing. My husband and I love kind of like tropical Hawaiian, Polynesian culture. So I definitely wanted a bouquet that was very tropical, and she nailed it. For my hair and makeup, I use Supreme Makeup and Hair Design. That was actually kind of something that I had to research on my own. I'd been in like the Facebook groups and stuff, but it really was hard finding someone who could handle textured hair. And so I really wanted to make sure that, being new to the Central Florida area, that I wasn't just kind of like picking anyone random. So I found her online and I did a trial with her, and she did my engagement photos. Then she did the wedding. Then she did my baby shower, and she did some family photos for us. So I, kind of just established a really good relationship with Sakina at Supreme Makeup and Hair Design. I also used David and Vicky Arndt for our photography. For videography, we used David and Christina of Trinity Wedding Cinema. All of them were amazing. For invitations and save the dates, I did impressions by Amy Lee. I found her on Etsy. And then because of our early morning ceremony, we did recommend Sabrina's Delicacies. She does charcuterie and brunch boards. So she was able to make little brunch boxes for people so that they had a little snack as they were getting ready at 3 a.m. or whatever time they had to get ready. So we used the amazing Catherine Martell from Martell Services. So she was able to steam my second dress. She was able to put out all of our decor, welcome sign, and everything at California Grill. We weren't able to use her at Tree of Life and California Grill because it just would have been too much to try to get her in both places. So our stuff was kind of sent over to Tree of Life, our memorial stuff from my parents and my uncle. And then my friends were just gracious enough to actually like pick up all the stuff and then move it over to California Grill where it was set up there by Catherine. Those were all of my outside vendors.
Got it. How did you choose your officiant?
So she's actually our pastor. So she flew down from the Maryland area. In fact, she preached on Sunday, flew down that night, and was there Monday morning for a rehearsal at the Grand Floridian.
Did you guys add any kind of entertainment to the ceremony or the reception?
We had a DJ. We had J.W. Yeager, who was amazing. So our reception started at 7 a.m. And I think we were a little hesitant at first to have a DJ, but we knew our guests and we knew that they knew we wanted to have a party. So everyone decided they were going to dance at 7 a.m. So it wasn't an issue. And then we also had Mickey and Minnie in their 50th anniversary outfits, which was amazing.
Do you have any menu items or cake flavors from your reception that you'd recommend? I know people are sometimes leery of using California Grill because there's not a lot of modification you can do to the menus.
Yeah, so for our cake, we had red velvet and cookies and cream. We actually did our cake tasting on a staycation at the beach club. And my husband's like, let's try these. And he put those flavors together, and we were like, this is amazing. So red velvet and cookies and cream for sure. And then almond and amaretto mousse. That was really good. In fact, to this day, like people are still asking us about our cake. Like, what was that cake that you guys had at your wedding? So, I highly recommend those two flavors. In terms of just the menu at California Grill, we know that the chefs are amazing there. It's a signature restaurant, so we really weren't worried about not having a tasting. We were able to make like slight modifications. I think we had like chicken and waffles versus just plain waffles. Like we were able to just add the chicken to that. So that was one thing that they let us do.
Oh, that's great. Can you tell my listeners a little bit about your dessert party at UK Lochside in Epcot?
Yeah, sure. So we had our dessert party the same night as our wedding, and we decided to go with just a few little desserts and stuff, not a lot because we knew that the time was going to be very short. We picked UK Lochside mainly because my husband actually grew up overseas. So he spent a lot of time in Europe, so we figured that would be fitting. And then we had read a lot about the views of the fireworks were amazing in that location. So we picked that. And then we actually were able to get amazing photos kind of in the garden area right there in UK. So the guide that we had was able to take us over there and kind of block it off and move people out of the way. So there's a lot of video and shots where there's no one on the streets because they literally kind of cleared it out for us.
That's great. Can you tell my listeners about your dessert party menu?
Yeah, so we had zebra domes, so we kind of tied in the Animal Kingdom theme. And then we had cheeseburger spring rolls from Magic Kingdom, and then the buffalo chicken spring rolls with an assortment of Mickey bars and Rice Krispie treats.
And then how did you choose your ride mix in?
So Remy, we did decide to do that because it had just opened and we had asked for approval. And in fact, they were waiting to the last minute really to give us approval on that. And so once we got it, we were like, this is the perfect ride mix in. We knew I wouldn't have an issue with my dress. And then it wasn't going to be far for maybe some of our guests with mobility issues to walk to maybe Soarin' or, Living with the Land or anything that was in the front of the park. So it really was a short walk from UK Lochside to the French Pavilion.
Nice. Okay. Can you give my listeners a timeline of how the wedding day all fit together?
Yeah, sure. So it started pretty early for me. In fact, I did not go to sleep. So with the fact that our ceremony moved up to 5:30, hair and makeup started at midnight for me. So I had hair and makeup. I opted not to have a bridal party. I, in fact, have been a bridesmaid or maid of honor 8 times before I got married myself. So I decided that was not something I wanted. So hair and makeup was done fairly early, I think. I had time to kind of just like relax after that. Video and photography showed up at 3 a.m. They started with me first, and then they went over to my husband's room with my bonus sons and took pictures of them. Then I was picked up at 4:30 to head over to Animal Kingdom. And then I was in my holding area. And then the ceremony was at 5:30. We had some pictures after the ceremony in front of the Tree of Life. And then we were taken backstage and headed over to California Grill. Our reception was from 7 to 11 a.m. After our reception, we actually did a couple of photos around the monorail loop. We definitely wanted to prioritize photos on the monorail and then some at the Polynesian. And then after that, we took a long break and a much needed nap. And then we met back up with our guests at Epcot around 7:30. From there, we had our dessert party, our fireworks, and then we went to our ride mix-in, and that was the end of our day.
Wonderful. So, out of all of this, what ended up being your favorite memory of your wedding day?
I think for me, well, outside of obviously marrying my best friend, Our guests really lit up when they saw Mickey and Minnie. So JW did an amazing job. Of course, it's super early in the morning, so he kept the crowd energized, but he was able to kind of really, really hype them up, and people had no idea who was showing up. And then as soon as Mickey and Minnie came in, like everyone turned into a kid, and just seeing their faces was amazing. In fact, my husband, like, I think he forgot that they were coming, so he was like going crazy. I'm like, dude, we paid for this. Like, how do you not know? But that was fun too. And then walking through Epcot, so we came in kind of by the restrooms in UK Lochside, kind of across from Rose and Crown. And people, the cheering and the clapping, it was almost concert loud. Like we really, at one point, I was like, okay, I have chills. Like I couldn't even believe how loud people were just cheering and clapping for us. So that was really special too.
So, when you guys were planning, what were some of the most important aspects of the event where you focused your attention or your budget?
I think for us, knowing that we were actually planning a wedding kind of coming out of COVID, we wanted to make sure that guests, when they traveled, it was a unique experience and that it was worth their travel. So I think we really focused on that, and we really wanted to make sure that it was memorable. So, in fact, to this day, the person who sang while I walked down the aisle and sang during my memorial ceremony was Alton Fitzgerald White, and he is the longest running Mufasa in Broadway history. And he says that we, hands down, have the best wedding he's ever been to. And that's saying a lot coming from this Broadway star. So I think that was our biggest thing, is like making sure it was the guest experience was amazing.
That's interesting. Did you have to get special permission to have him perform?
He is a friend of mine, so I did have to kind of let Disney know who he was at first. And then he had music that needed to be played when he sang. So I had to send that over to them. We had like kind of more of a extended rehearsal to make sure that they understood all of the cues, because he sang I Found Love when I walked down the aisle. He sang the entire song for that, but he also sang They Live in You from The Lion King on Broadway. But he only sang the first part into the chorus, and he sang it in his version from his Disney My Way CD. So we did have to have that music submitted and work with the lighting and the sound team. So it all worked out. But yeah, we did have to kind of do a little extra to let them know who was actually performing.
Interesting. Okay. Then, when you were planning, were there any aspects that were less important where you saved your money or just your effort?
I think picking the Tree of Life and California Grill allowed us to cut back on our floral. So the ceremony, we didn't really need much. I think we did some lanterns in the aisle, and that was about it, because we did have the tree lit up, and I asked for it to stay lit like with purples because that was part of our color scheme. So we didn't really have to do a lot there. And then, like I said, California Grill, the view alone, that floor to ceiling window, you don't have to do much. What I did do was I incorporated some theme park aspects. So we did, the escort cards were actually the old school fast passes. So everyone came in and got those. And then the actual table markers were castles, but they had the names of different rides on them that matched the fast passes. So it was really easy to do that. And then I think we had some floating candles and rose petals, and that was it. It was really easy. So I think that's where we really saved our money.
That's a great tip. Did anything go wrong or just not turn out like you expected?
Yeah, we did have a little bit of a hiccup. So I was picked up at 4:30 in the morning, and the plan was to take me right to Animal Kingdom. I would be held in the gift shop. I think it's Island Mercantile, and then they would go back and get Jabar and my bonus sons and bring them to the venue. Well, we got to security, and they just didn't know that I was supposed to be there almost. They held us up for such a long time. In fact, it was probably about 20 minutes. And so then that held up picking up Jabar and the boys, and then they also had to hold the guests. So everything kind of got pushed back a little bit, which then made our time for photos kind of delayed too, because we actually had to cut that like really, really short since our ceremony was about 30 minutes. And then the other issue that we had was after the photos in front of the Tree of Life, we had charter transportation. So we had a limo for me and Jabar. We had a van for my bonus sons, my mother-in-law, and my brother. And we get to the backstage area, we get in the limo, and we get a phone call from my mother-in-law, and she's like, they left us. And we're like, what do you mean they left you? What do you mean they left you? So apparently Disney, the van was told to leave and did not have them. So they were stuck backstage. So we are talking to the limo driver and we're like, you guys left our family. You really need to go back and get them. So he's calling. And by the time we got to the Contemporary, they sent the limo driver, the bus, and the chartered van back. So they had three options in terms of transportation, but they sent everyone back. Someone had to go and get them. So they did get to the reception slightly later than everyone, but by the time we got to the reception, our planner had already called the day of coordinators and said, there's going to be compensation for them. So it all worked out.
Got it. Was there anything that seemed like a big deal beforehand, but turned out not to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did worry about the weather. So, of course, they told us what our backup location would be. And initially, it was going to be like the conservation station. And I just remember looking at pictures. I'm like, there's too many colors. Like, that's not going to work for me. So then they said, well, you guys can have like the train station. And I'm like, I still don't want that. So I think I like stressed, like, please, 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 like, don't let it rain. And it did not. So we were fine with that. And then I think I did worry also about whether or not the live stream would stream properly and people could see and hear, because we did do that with David and Christina. They offered us a live stream option since my grandmother wasn't able to travel and other people couldn't make it. And then also, I worried about the sound people not getting Alton's cues right, but everyone nailed it, and so it was fine.
Is there anything you would have done differently knowing what you know now?
I don't think so. I think I was well prepared in terms of, going into my planning meeting and what to expect, and knowing that I had to do kind of a lot of research and planning beforehand, and then also expecting that Disney is not going to respond to you necessarily right away in terms of, a traditional wedding where you talk to a planner maybe 6 to 8 to 12 months out, and just kind of managing those expectations. And then I think, just going into it and saying, hey, Disney does this every day at multiple locations. It's going to be amazing. So, yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
That's great. Do you have any other tips or advice for future Disney couples?
Yeah, I would say, one, your BEO is going to be wrong. Just go ahead and roll with it. The first one is probably going to have a lot of corrections. But what I did was I left everything in the same email chain. I was very detailed in terms of what the changes needed to be. So I would reference the page, I would mark it up in Adobe, I would leave notes, and then every time a correction was made, I would note that in the email, like, okay, this has been corrected, no changes here. And so I would say be as specific as possible and as detailed as possible. One thing that was really important to me, I did not want to be held in Pizza Safari at Animal Kingdom. I did not want to smell like pizza, food, or anything. And so I told them, please do not. I would prefer Island Mercantile, and that's what they gave me. And so, just stuff like that. Like, all you can do is ask, and they can say no. So, I think their go-to sometimes is Pizza Safari, and that just doesn't work because you don't want to get up to the front of the aisle and you smell like pepperoni. So I definitely made sure that I was very, very detailed in my BEO and our requests.
Well, Sarah, I think you've offered a lot of great tips and advice for anyone who's interested in getting married or having a vow renewal at Animal Kingdom, and I appreciate your taking the time.
Thanks, Carrie. It's been wonderful.
That's our show for today. I'm your host, Carrie Hayward, inviting you to join me again next week for another episode of the Disney Wedding Podcast. Past shows and tons of photos for each episode are available on my website, DisneyWeddingPodcast.com, or listen in your favorite podcast app. And for instant answers to all your Walt Disney World wedding questions, check out Carrie Hayward's Fairy Tale Weddings Guide, available as an interactive ebook with continual free updates at fairytaleweddingsguide.com.